In a world that mocked her, a single mother stood alone, broken, forgotten, bullied by the very people who should have helped her. But what no one knew was that her greatest strength wasn't herself, it was her children. They were born with powers the world couldn't explain, and a love so fierce they'd do anything to protect her. This is the story of pain, power, and a mother's unbreakable bond. Welcome to Beyond Belief Stories, for heart-wrenching, emotional stories like no other. She was tired of being called worthless, tired of surviving, but just when she was ready to give up, her children gave her a reason to keep going. The sun had barely risen over the slums of Okuda Lane when Amara stepped out of her tiny one-room shack, a baby tied to her back and two toddlers holding on to the frayed edges of her wrapper. Her eyes were tired, lips cracked, and her once glowing brown skin was dulled by days of sun and sorrow. She had aged far beyond her 29 years. Her beauty was still there, in the curve of her cheekbones and the gentle strength in her gaze, but life had smothered her glow. The moment she stepped out, whispers followed her like shadows. "See her," one woman scoffed as she swept her compound. "3 children, no husband and no job. Shameless." "Maybe she should just give those children away," another muttered. "What can a woman like that even offer them?" Every day was the same. Judgmental eyes, spiteful tongues. She had become the neighborhood's favorite punching bag, a target of gossip, insult, and pity all at once. Amara never responded. She just walked silently to the market dump, where she scavenged for leftover vegetables that vendors threw away. It was humiliating, but it was survival. Every meal she scraped together for her children was a silent act of defiance. She would not let them starve. The story everyone knew was simple. Amara had 3 children from 3 different men. No father in sight, no family, no career. She had been a hairdresser once, but when her landlord demanded favors she wouldn't give, she was evicted. Her shop was destroyed, her savings gone, her dignity shredded. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was the truth that lived behind her tired eyes. Each night, after washing her children's feet and feeding them the little she had, Amara would sit by the window and whisper softly to the stars. She'd whisper prayers, wishes, dreams, and sometimes apologies, for bringing her children into a world that seemed so cruel, for not being enough. But her children, those little souls with soft voices and bright eyes, never saw her as broken. In their eyes, she was a warrior, their hero. The woman who held the sky from falling. The girl who never gave up, even when the world spat on her name. Zina, her eldest at 9, was quiet and fiercely observant. Toba, age 7, always knew what people were thinking even before they spoke. And the baby, little Nimi, had a strange calming presence, like her giggle could chase away thunderclouds. They were not like other children, though Amara had yet to notice how different. Sometimes, strange things happened around them, like the time a neighbor's sick child touched Nimi's hand and recovered by the next day. Or how Zina once guessed a lottery number and won a stranger enough money to move out of the slums. Or how Toba always knew when someone was lying. But Amara had no energy to dwell on miracles. Life was already strange enough. One afternoon, as she returned from the dump with a sack of spoiled tomatoes, a group of teenage boys leaned against the fence and laughed as she passed. "Hey, Madam Useless, why don't you go find baby number 4? One called out, sending the others into a fit of laughter. "Or maybe her next baby daddy will finally stick around," another added. She didn't flinch, didn't turn. She'd mastered the art of not reacting, but inside, something cracked. That night, she cried silently as the children slept. She let the tears fall freely for once. She felt alone, forgotten, broken. What she didn't know, as she rocked herself to sleep, was that a storm was coming. A storm unlike anything the world had seen, and at the eye of that storm were her children. They had watched. They had listened. They had felt her pain deeper than any child should, and something ancient, something powerful, had begun to stir in their little hearts. Their mother, the woman the world called worthless, was about to become the most protected woman on earth. But for now, she wept, unaware of what her children were about to become. The night was thick with humidity and silence. A full moon hung low over Okuda Lane, casting silver light over rusted roofs and cracked pavements. Inside her dimly lit room, Amara was washing her children's feet, humming an old lullaby her grandmother used to sing. It was the only song that seemed to calm Nimi these days. The baby had been unusually restless, as if she could sense something the rest of them couldn't. Dinner had been half a bowl of gari and a few spoons of soup from a kind neighbor. They had eaten quietly, as always, but Toba kept glancing toward the door. Zina sat upright, even after the others had curled into their corner mat. Something about that night didn't feel right. "Mom," Zina whispered as Amara finally laid down beside them, "can you lock the door tonight?" Amara smiled faintly. "There's nothing out there, my love, just frogs and mosquitoes." But she locked it anyway. It was nearly midnight when the banging started. Boom, boom, boom. The door shook violently on its rusted hinges. Amara sprang up, heart racing, clutching Nimi to her chest as Zina and Toba scrambled to her side. "Come out, Ashawo," a voice barked from outside. Laughter followed. Mocking, drunken, dangerous. "You think you're better than us? Walking around with your poor face and your skinny legs like you're holy," someone else yelled. Amara's blood ran cold. She recognized the voices, neighborhood boys turned street thugs. They had always thrown jabs, always sneered. But this was different. Before she could react, the wooden door cracked open with a final crack, and 4 figures stormed in. Their faces were partially covered with cloth. One carried a stick, another had a bottle. Their eyes gleamed with hate, and something worse, amusement. Amara screamed, "Please, please, my children, don't hurt my children." But they pushed her down, kicked her side. Nimi was wailing. Zina and Toba clung to each other, frozen in horror. "You want to cry now?" one thug sneered. "Why don't you go cry to one of your baby daddies?" "Oh wait, none of them stayed, did they?" Another raised the stick, laughing as he stepped toward her. Then it happened. The room shifted. Time didn't just slow down. It stopped. The air grew thick, humming with an unseen force, like electricity before a lightning strike. The thugs looked confused. Their smirks melted into hesitation. The one holding the stick tried to lift it, but his arm froze midair. And then, the children opened their eyes. Zina's eyes glowed violet. Her pupils swirled like galaxies, wide and shining. The broken table beside her rose a few inches into the air without anyone touching it. Toba's eyes shimmered gold. His gaze locked onto one thug, and suddenly the man dropped to his knees, gasping, sobbing, mumbling, "I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt her, my mother. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And baby Nimi, her tiny palms lit up like dawn. A soft blue glow spilled from her skin, washing over her mother's bruised face. The wounds faded. Amara blinked, dazed. The pain in her side, gone. The thugs tried to run. They couldn't. The very ground beneath them seemed to hold them down, as if gravity itself had turned against them. And Zina, for the first time, spoke with a voice that echoed with something far older than her age. "You will not touch our mother again." Her words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like a prophecy. The boys finally broke free, or maybe the children let them go. Either way, they stumbled, tripping over their own legs as they fled into the night, screaming, "Witches! Spirits!" Silence fell again. The lights returned to normal. The glow vanished from the children's eyes. Nimi giggled softly, curling back into her mother's arms. Amara just sat there, trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper. What had she just witnessed? Were her children angels? Cursed? Gifted? She didn't know. All she knew was the world had changed that night, and so had her children. The night after the attack was eerily quiet. Not a single dog barked. Not even the frogs croaked in the gutters outside. It was as though the very street itself was holding its breath, afraid to wake the power that had just revealed itself within the walls of the smallest, most disrespected house on Okuda Lane. Amara sat by the door, arms folded tightly across her chest, watching her children sleep under the soft glow of a kerosene lamp. The bruises on her skin had healed completely. Where there should have been swelling, there was nothing but smooth, untouched flesh. She hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Her mind raced. What were they? What happened last night? Zina, Toba, Nimi. They had saved her, no doubt. But they had done so in a way that defied everything she understood about the world. Zina stirred first, just as dawn kissed the sky. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, and for a moment, the violet glow returned. She sat up calmly, looking around like she had just come out of a dream she couldn't quite explain. "Did I float the table again?" she asked in a sleepy whisper. Amara's heart skipped. "You remember?" she asked. Zina nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. I wasn't scared. It felt like the table listened to me, like I could feel everything around me, even the boy's anger. It was loud in my head. A moment later, Toba sat up too, rubbing his temples. My head hurts, he mumbled, eyes still half closed. I heard them, the bad men. I heard their thoughts. They didn't want to hurt you, Mama. One of them just wanted to look strong. Another was scared. They were all broken inside. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. She moved to hold him, but he raised a hand, not to stop her, but because something was happening. A ripple passed through the air. Zena gasped. Objects on the shelf vibrated, and the lantern's flame flickered. Toba's eyes glowed again. Not golden this time, but almost white. A light so pure it made Amara tremble. Toba, Zena cried. Control it, like I did. I don't know how, he yelled, gripping his head. It's too loud. Just then, Mimi, only 2, crawled over and placed her tiny hand on her brother's forehead. Her eyes didn't glow this time, but her touch carried warmth and peace. The energy in the room faded instantly. Toba exhaled. Amara's hands covered her mouth. Her baby daughter had just calmed a storm. With a touch. Mimi giggled and pointed to a crack in the wall. The crack shimmered and then sealed itself, right before their eyes. That was the moment Amara knew. This was no coincidence. This was a gift. Born out of pain. She thought back to her pregnancy with Zena, how her partner had abandoned her before she gave birth, and how she had gone into labor alone on a cold, rainy night, how she nearly died but held on because she knew Zena would need her. Toba's father had been a lie wrapped in charm. He had stolen from her, used her, then vanished. Amara was heartbroken when Toba was born, but the boy never cried. He had simply stared into her eyes, as if he already knew the world would try to break her, and he was here to help hold her together. Then there was Mimi. Her birth had been the hardest. She was born after Amara lost everything, her job, her home, her hope. She had cried all through the delivery, not from physical pain, but from the weight of shame. And yet, the moment she heard Mimi's first breath, a strange peace had filled the room. Each child had come during her darkest hour, and now, each one carried a light that could not be explained. Later that day, Zena sat on a wooden stool and stared at a plastic cup. She narrowed her eyes, raised her hand, and the cup began to levitate. Just slightly, but it moved. Toba practiced too, learning how to block out other people's thoughts by humming loudly to himself. It didn't always work, but he was trying. And Mimi? She healed a kitten with a broken paw, just touched it and smiled, and the kitten leapt up and ran off like nothing had happened. Amara stood behind the curtain watching it all, overwhelmed, scared, but somewhere beneath the fear, pride bloomed. Her children were powerful, not just in their gifts but in their hearts. They weren't angry. They weren't cruel. They had felt pain, and instead of becoming bitter, they had become protectors. She fell to her knees, hands raised toward the ceiling, and for the first time in years she didn't pray for food or shelter or safety. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for making them mine." What she didn't know was this. Gifts like theirs always come with a cost. And somewhere far beyond their broken neighborhood, someone had felt the ripple of energy that night. Someone was watching. Waiting. Because gifted children were rarely left alone. Word travels fast in places where there's little to do and even less to celebrate. Within days of the incident, the whispers began. The thugs who once terrorized Okuta Lane now crossed the street when passing by Amara's compound. Some claimed they were cursed. Others swore they saw her children floating in midair. Most just said something happened, and it changed everything. But Amara didn't care about the gossip. She was still waking up early to fetch water. Still mending clothes by candlelight. Still sweeping the dirt floor with hands that had known hunger. What changed was the look in people's eyes. No one spat insults anymore. No one called her names in the market. In fact, people started greeting her with cautious smiles, their tone almost reverent. "Good morning, Mama Zena. You're looking strong today, Amara. God bless your home." She didn't understand it at first. She hadn't told anyone about her children's powers. She hadn't gone around boasting. She was still the same woman. But her children, they weren't the same. And that was the beginning of everything. It started with a small act of kindness. An elderly man, Baba Sula, collapsed outside his gate one morning. The neighbors rushed around him, panicking, shouting, unsure what to do. His children were in the city. The clinic was too far. Zina had been walking home with Toba, both carrying firewood. She saw the chaos and ran toward the old man. She knelt beside him without hesitation, her hand hovering above his chest. "Zina!" Amara had shouted from across the road. "No, wait!" But Zina's eyes closed and a strange calm settled over the scene. Toba stood beside her, eyes narrowed, listening to something no one else could hear. "He's not dying," he said softly. "He's scared, his heart is tired, but it's not his time." And then Mimi toddled forward, out of nowhere, her tiny hand touching Babasula's wrinkled forehead. Blue light, soft, barely visible, like mist at dawn. Babasula gasped and opened his eyes. I saw something," he whispered, voice trembling. "3 lights, standing over me." The neighbors stepped back in silence. Zina didn't say a word. She helped him sit up, smiled politely, then returned to her bundle of firewood like nothing had happened. But the neighbors talked. By sundown, someone whispered, "Those children, they're not ordinary." The next day a woman came to Amara's house. She had a sick child with fever. She didn't ask questions, just cried and begged, "Please let the little one touch her." Amara wanted to say no. She wanted to protect them. But before she could answer, Mimi crawled up to the child, placed her hands on his cheeks, and the crying stopped. The child sat up, sweaty but smiling. The mother dropped to her knees. "You are blessed, Amara. Forgive us for every cruel word." More people came. A boy who had been stuttering for years, now speaking clearly. A pregnant woman with severe pain, now walking with ease. A thief caught red-handed, stopped mid-escape when Toba's voice echoed in his head. "Drop the knife." He later confessed everything without being touched. Zina floated a fallen bag of maize for a market woman too weak to bend over. She didn't even notice her powers activating anymore. It had become second nature. And suddenly, Amara wasn't invisible. She was important. Women began bringing her food without asking. Men offered to patch her leaking roof. Children from the area now played respectfully outside her house. They called her Mama the Blessed. But for Amara, the strangest moment came one evening, as the sun painted the sky gold. She was sweeping her compound when Madame Tenny, the very woman who once mocked her relentlessly, approached her. I was wrong about you," Madame Tenny whispered, head bowed. "You are not a disgrace. You are chosen." She offered Amara a small bag of rice. "Please, for your children." Amara took the bag but said nothing. Her heart was conflicted, both grateful and cautious, because with respect came fear, and with fear came attention. That night, after the children had slept, Amara stood outside and looked up at the stars. "I never asked for this," she whispered. "I only ever wanted peace." But peace, she was learning, was a fragile thing when the world begins to see you as more than human. What she didn't know was that someone far from Okuda Lane, had been watching. And a letter was already on its way. One that would shake the very foundation of her past. The letter came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. The sky was thick with the smell of incoming rain. Gray clouds gathering slowly, the air humid and restless. Amara was cooking porridge outside, stirring slowly over a small charcoal fire while Nimi sat nearby playing with smooth pebbles. Zina and Toba were inside, reading an old science book they had borrowed from the school library. Nothing felt unusual, until she saw the envelope. It had been slipped through the narrow gap in her metal gate. Cream-colored, aged, but sealed with an unfamiliar red wax stamp, the kind you'd expect from a courtroom or royalty, not a place like Okuda Lane. Amara wiped her hands on her wrapper, walked to the gate and picked it up cautiously. Her name was handwritten in sharp cursive. 2. Amara Adebayo, private and confidential. Her stomach twisted. She looked around, no one in sight. She opened it slowly, fingers trembling. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, its words written in the same neat, expensive ink. "You may not remember me, but I never forgot you. The child I left behind, the one I abandoned. I want her back. It is time." Amara's knees buckled. She had to sit on the low bench beside the fire. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned the sound of boiling porridge. There was only one person that could be. And it wasn't someone from the neighborhood. It wasn't a distant cousin, or an old friend, or a concerned charity. It was her. Amina Olawale. The woman who had once held Amara's future in her hands and crushed it like a dried leaf. 13 years ago, Amara had been a hopeful girl. Young, brilliant, dreaming of a scholarship to study medicine. She had been accepted into a prestigious pre-university mentorship program run by a woman named Amina Olawale, a celebrated philanthropist and powerful businesswoman known across Nigeria. Amina had taken an interest in Amara, promised her opportunities, mentorship, sponsorship, even told her to move into her estate so she could focus on school without distractions. Amara had believed every word. She remembered the cold tiles of Amina's mansion, the marble walls, the clean bed sheets, the food she never had to fight for. It was paradise, until it wasn't. Until the rumors about Amina's secret programs began to emerge. Until Amara stumbled on something, files she wasn't supposed to see, experiments she didn't understand, and rooms in that house that no child should ever have to discover. And then, suddenly, she was gone. Thrown out. No money, no help, no more promises. Pregnant, and alone. She had never told a soul about what really happened. Not even the fathers of her children. Not even her own mother before she died. And now, after all these years, Amina wanted her child back? But which one? Zina? Toba? Or Nimi? A chill ran down Amara's spine as the fire crackled beside her. She looked at her children from a distance, watching them laugh together inside the house. Which one had she been after all along? Had she been watching them? Tracking them? Or worse, had she planted something inside Amara from the beginning? The children were gifted, yes, but maybe their powers weren't just divine. Maybe they were created. And if Amina was coming back into their lives, it wouldn't be out of love. It would be for control. Amara gripped the letter tightly, eyes burning with a mother's fury. "I don't care who you are now, Amina," she whispered to the wind. "You abandoned me. You gave up your right to this family. And if you come near my children..." She rose to her feet slowly, steady and strong, her voice like thunder before a storm. "You'll meet something far more powerful than fear." But in the shadows of the city, far from the dusty warmth of Okuda Lane, Amina Olawale stood by a tall window, reading a surveillance report. She smiled. "They're waking up, all three, just like we designed," she said coldly. "Shall we initiate contact, ma'am?" her assistant asked. Amina looked at a glowing map of concentric rings, Amara's neighborhood marked in the center. "Not yet," she said. "Let the mother think she has power. Let her think her children are free. When the time comes, they'll return to me. They always do." She turned away, her voice colder than steel. "It's in their blood." What happens when the past returns? What happens when the world starts watching? And what happens when love is tested by truth? Stay tuned for more good educative stories. Book Go Back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.